Hey, Dr. Robertson, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Dr. Mosley. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm kind of excited. I don't think I've ever guessed been on this class topic ever before, so
All
this
right,
is
I'll stop
exciting.
the camera and kick you off. And
All right. Here, let me go ahead. Nope. Sorry. All right, I'm back.
okay, so let's talk about tourism through the ages. And it's funny. It's hard for me to imagine a world where travel and tourism isn't just, you know, isn't something that's taken for granted by everyone. But it's not. It's a relatively recent human invention. This idea of travel for pleasure, the ability to travel at all, is a relatively recent development. Um, Now, in the past, people did travel, and pretty much as far back as human history goes, there were attractions and things people traveled for. We have the seven wonders of the ancient world. Here we have the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx, and so
Hmm.
these essentially date to the very edges of written human history. And so, as long as there have been humans, these have been attractions, more or less. People would
Yeah.
travel to see them, and I mean, everyone from Alexander the Great to Caesar to Napoleon.
Hmm.
All this was something they all wanted to see.
Well, I can't blame them. I mean,
Yeah. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the tomb of Mausolus of Halicarnassus. Uh, Now, I don't know much about this, but I do know that this is the origin of the word mausoleum.
huh,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah. The statue of Zeus at Olympia, the Colossus of Rhodes, a giant bronze statue standing over the entrance to the bay at
Yeah.
Rhodes. The lighthouse in Alexandria, Virginia,
Hmm.
and the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. These are all things, going back about as far as we have records for. There were a few things people would travel for, but it was kind of the purview of the very wealthy, the very elite. It's very difficult to travel. It's dangerous to travel. Um,
Well, well,
imagine,
yeah.
imagine traveling, without money. Well, there's the first thing. How hard would it be, like if you're doing it on a barter system? This
Well, yeah. First off, it wasn't like you could just check the internet and be like, well, what does this equal that in this location?
No, you're literally taking a herd of goats with you. It's like,
Yeah.
so how many meals can I get? How many people can I transport on this boat for a goat? And and then
Uh,
you don't speak the same languages and you don't have the same customs. And like you said, there is no internet. There is no way to look it up.
no, there's no Google Maps for you to print out directions or anything else. I mean, they thought at one point that you could fall off the edge of the earth if you sailed far enough.
Yeah. So they went to Arkansas up here.
Pretty much. I
Yeah.
mean,
So looking at the ancient, probably there are a lot of things that were necessary for the tourism travel to begin. And the Sumerians invented the first thing that was necessary. So like all travel, uh, the whole
beer.
concept of tourism depends on something the Sumerians invented.
Hmm.
That you couldn't, basically we couldn't travel without it. There's no way to make it happen. You know what that was they invented?
Restaurants.
No,
Hotels.
money.
Money. Yeah, you gotta have that cash money.
Yeah, so this coin, this piece of metal right here, represents an abstract amount of value. And I can take this coin and give it to someone, and they understand how much in services or goods they're supposed to provide in exchange. So I don't have to take my herd of goats with me everywhere I go. Instead, I can take a small portable amount of wealth with me that I can exchange for goods and services. That makes travel a lot easier than basically having to carry your entire household with you. So that's the
Yeah,
first.
yeah. That's it. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, the Egyptians also had some important things they contributed to travel. One, having the Nile. So people would go up and down the Nile. That was, it was one of the largest rivers in the world. That was a lot. There's a lot of travel that happened there. People wanting to go to see things like the lighthouse at Alexandria, or wanting to go see the Sphinx, or wanting to go see the pyramids.
Yeah.
And so this created some of the standards and practices for travel, just because they were the first country that had a lot of people traveling.
Yeah.
Um, they contributed some in the way of road building, because roads are important. Basically, all roads are built for the same purpose, and that's to transport military. It's like the U.S. Interstate system, which
Yeah.
is great and awesome, and we all take advantage of, wasn't built so that we can go on vacation.
What?
It was built to transport troops quickly and efficiently across
Yeah.
big spaces.
Yeah.
And so that's what it's there for. So road building has always been that way. And, the Egyptians contributed to this. They had a standardized government over a large area, so that you get this standardization of the economy. You get the standardization of the language. You get the standardization of, pardon me,
Yeah.
you get the standardization of the way business is done, or the customs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing is, the Egyptians, being a major kingdom, a major empire, had trade. And so since they are wealthy and since they're large, people want to trade with them. They have goods, they have treasures and things like that. And this is a hub for people. It creates trade. So this trade network creates roads. It creates places for travelers to stop, and spend the night. It provides services for the people who are providing goods. We need somewhere for them to eat. We need somewhere for them to spend the night. Another, we'll step forward a little bit in time to ancient Rome. Ancient Rome contributed a lot to the idea of leisure travel too. The first thing they contributed, probably the most important thing, were their roads. They were premier road builders.
Well, I mean, all roads lead to Rome.
They do. That's a famous saying. The Appian Way, which is considered to be the highlight of Roman road building, was built a little over 2,000 years ago. It's still in existence and still being used every day.
Wow.
They built modern road building is called macadamization. That's the word for how roads are constructed in layers.
Yeah.
The Romans invented this. And so the way we make roads now is still the way roads, or the way is the way they were made then. And to give you some idea of how big, how massive the Roman Empire was, and how long these roads were, essentially, except for having to cross the English Channel on a boat, you could take a continuous path from Scotland to Iran.
Really?
Yeah, you could. Roman roads traveled from the tip of England to the tip of Iran.
Interesting.
And an amazing accomplishment. And along the way, these are all this is all Roman territory, so they all speak the same language, or there's someone there who can translate. They all use the same coins, and all these things that this made travel possible. Supposedly, with exchanges of fast horses, you could travel from one end of the empire to another in a week. You could go from Iran to Scotland in a week, which is stunning.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing Rome had was they had wealth. So the Roman Empire was very wealthy. So you have all these merchants and people living in Rome, and they want to travel. Well, the lands have been largely settled. They're basically safe. They're under Roman law. There are roads going everywhere. If you have a horse and you have money, you can pretty much go anywhere you want in the Roman Empire. So if you want to see the pyramids, you can do that. If you want to go see the frontier, you can do that. You want to visit your faraway country palace, you can do that. So Rome really had sort of like the first formalized tourism. And then there was another thing that kind of so all these, the Greeks, Egyptians, the Romans, they're all kind of around the Mediterranean. So there's a lot of connection, there's a lot of trading that's happening there. And the other big established empire nation in the world was China. And so there's trade happening basically across the world between these empires. And that is the Silk Road, which is not the Silk Road that you hear about or heard about on the internet. But basically it is the path that traders travel between China and the Mediterranean.
Yeah. And the Chinese really took the care to make sure that it was pretty secure too. Because, there's a big country. People think America's big, but China is ginormous. So,
Well, there were lots of things that happened. One of my favorite stories is attributed to Genghis Khan, and depending on where you are in human history, how you look at him as a hero or a villain. But one of the things was he recognized that trade was very important to the empire, and so there was a problem with people being looted along the Silk Road. And what he would do was, if he caught someone looting it, he would kill your entire family for 3 generations. So all your brothers and sisters, all your nieces and nephews, your parents and your grandparents.
well, that's one way to eradicate it.
And they said that within like 5 years,
Yeah.
an unescorted woman could walk the length of that. Like, there's just,
Now she may have been related to Genghis Khan.
yeah, but
Apparently all of us are. So.
yeah, apparently. So prior to the 1700s, the first real big tourist attraction, one of the one that's most like modern attractions, was the Olympics.
Yeah.
People from all over the ancient world, the Mediterranean region, traveled every 4 years to Greece to compete in the Olympic Games. And so this was a regularly scheduled travel event, kind of unusual. In the Middle Ages, travel was mostly for religious purposes. Hey, Matt, did you ever had to read the Canterbury Tales when you're in school?
I did not. South Dakota wasn't high on their list. So
You didn't miss much. I did not. It's not one of my favorite things I ever read.
yeah.
But the Canterbury Tales is a series of stories that are told by religious pilgrims as they're traveling on a religious pilgrimage in medieval Europe. That's what the Canterbury Tales are. Is they're going to the cathedral at Canterbury, and so as they travel, they're telling each other's tales. And so that travel of religious pilgrimages, like you see in the Canterbury Tales, that was pretty much travel through the Middle Ages in Europe. That was, people didn't travel for fun. They didn't travel for, there was no reason to travel. After the fall of the Roman Empire, we have a lot of different economies, lots of different coinage, a lot of lawless territory. People kind of stayed in their own little kingdoms.
Well, yeah, and it wasn't exactly the easiest thing to do. I mean, you leave your house, you're also leaving your livestock, your crops, your whole livelihood.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah, and you're essentially abandoning it, and so someone else will come along and say, "Hey, look at this cool house. It's mine now."
Neat.
Now, as we move forward to the Renaissance and the rest, and immediately after the Renaissance, we kind of get into the first advent of the modern idea of travel, which was the Grand Tour, which was basically well-off
Jeremy Clarkson, yes.
No. Yeah, relatively well-off young adults in Europe. There was no such thing as college, really. So, how are we going to have someone complete their education? Well, we're just going to let them travel for 2 or 3 years and visit all the important spots in the world. So let's send them to Prague. Let's send them to Paris. Let's send them to St. Petersburg. And so it evolved that it was just normal that when you became of a certain age, about 18, you traveled for a few years. And so that created this need for, we need somewhere for these travelers to stay. Not everyone has relatives, so maybe we should create a guest house where people can stay. Not everyone can take food with them. Maybe we should provide a way to feed them.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, it's still a good way to round out your education. I highly suggest everybody do some traveling abroad.
Absolutely.
Any country you can get to, do it.
If you can travel abroad and come back and view the world the same as you did when you left, you did it wrong.
Pretty much. I don't know. My parents never got to really travel abroad, so we're going to take them to Taiwan and Japan. And I'm kind of curious to see how a couple 70-year-olds react to those two cultures when they grew up.
South Dakota and Taiwan are not very similar cultures?
Oh, it's weird. I don't think I'm going to get them on the back of a moped anytime soon. But.
Okay. Now, I like this chart, and I'll just explain this really quickly. This is kind of the for me personally, this is the evolution of resorts and restaurants.
Hmm.
And just from, I'm a history buff, and I always kind of find this very interesting to me that the history of resorts and restaurants have a common person at its heart.
Who?
That person is Catherine de' Medici. So I had said, that in the Mediterranean, there were lots of traders. Well, by the time we get into the Renaissance, the Venetians, the people who live in Venice, these are the premier traders in the world. This is a country, it's kind of like Hong Kong now. These are people who deal in commerce. So they're very, very wealthy there. Sort of nouveau riche. They're very, very wealthy. And they are probably the most cosmopolitan people in the world because they are the hub of all travel and all trade. So they have more interesting things there than pretty much anywhere else.
Yeah.
So that Venice, Italy was very important. Now, France was also very important because France was Europe's breadbasket. Basically, France had the best farmland in Europe and produced a surplus of food. So France has this history of producing a lot of high quality food. They have the best lamb, they have the best beans, they have the best cheese, and all of these things because that they just had this sort of geographic advantage.
Yeah. And
So
they have great wine.
yeah. So you get who Catherine de' Medici is she married a French king, and she was a Venetian princess, and with her she bought the rules of dining because there was more opportunity in Venice. So she had been exposed to Chinese culture. She'd been exposed to Egyptian culture. She knew more about spices. She knew more about food. She knew more about culture. And then you go to France where they have all this amazing food. And so basically all these rules we have about fine dining and fancy food and big ornate banquets and all, it goes to this one person who combined the rules of etiquette with the best food in the world. And so she did things like she is credited with inventing the fork. Prior to that, people ate with knives. Like you carve off a piece of meat, you stab it with your knife, you'd shove it in your mouth with the knife. She's credited with inventing the fork. So a lot of these things kind of go to her. And we get this kind of European style of dining. And then we get some interesting things happening. Just historically, we get the empires around the world. We get Britain has countries that are making coffee. They have countries that are making tea. Now, the tea houses and coffee houses were places you would go hang out, and they were popularized by musicians and playwrights, and they were considered places of great culture. I think this is what Starbucks kind of still trades on now. It's supposed to be a fun place. Then the tea gardens were kind of these outdoor places where people would sit around outside in nature and drink tea and have picnics. Mm. One thing they both have in common is, so we're getting this kind of evolution of places. They're not quite restaurants yet, but we have these places where people go sit inside and drink coffee. Then we have these places where people go outside and hang out.
We're getting close here.
And like to be in nature. And then they start like making it better than nature. They turn it into gardens and they put, sleeping cabins in it and things like that. Then we get the French Revolution. And, let's cut the heads off of all the royalty in France. And what that leads to is, we have had the best food in the world is in France. The rules of etiquette are in France because of Catherine Medici a few hundred years earlier. What we're going to do is we're going to cut the heads off of those royalty. And now all those servers, all those people who used to work for the king, all those who worked for the various barons and everyone were unemployed. That's where the first restaurant came from. These unemployed cooks in the royal service now had to find a way to feed themselves. They started opening restaurants, which took the model from the British coffee houses. And then the other thing, we have all these unemployed servers, all these employed room attendants and they move and they start work. They evolve this idea of a resort, which is a place in nature to go hang out and recover. It's like, living in the city, there's too much violence, there's too much noise. Let's go out in the country where we can relax. And so restaurants and resorts both came out of this kind of weird amalgamation of European history. Okay, so that's in Europe. In America, and I get this slide that automatically keeps shutting it off, but for whatever reason, this, hold on a second, I'm going to fix this if I can find it. So we'll just do it. Let's see. What can you see on your screen, Matt?
Oh, I can see the 1700s. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So I'm going to go through this. For some reason, it keeps shutting off, and then I'll reshare it. So in America, we get taverns. So this is...
Oh, turn off their timings in your stuff. Up top.
Up top.
To the right. To the right. Right there.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now let's try.
Son of a gun. I suck. All right.
So yeah, taverns pop up in the Americas in the 1700s. So these are places, America is very spread out compared to Europe. So these are places where people traveling can trade their horses, can spend the night, can get, they're not great accommodations. They're not, you go there, like you stop to eat there because you're traveling. You're not going to have a menu to choose from. Whatever the host,
whatever gruel they have is what you're going to eat.
Get. Yeah.
Whatever warm beer they got, that's what you got.
The first hotel opened in Broadway in New York City. Then we go forward to the 1800s, and we start getting like the idea of more modern spas and resorts, like what we think of as a spa resort. These start happening. The oldest travel agency in the U.S. opened in 1888.
Huh.
Hey, Matt, what's the name of the first travel agency? It just closed. It just declared bankruptcy this year because of COVID. Do you remember?
Really?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
I can't remember the name. Is it Thomas Cook?
Oh, the one over in Europe. Yeah. It wasn't COVID, though, that killed it. It was partly, but yeah. I mean, they were on their last legs anyways, and they left stranded a lot of people.
But that was the first travel agency in the world.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And they are no more. Yeah. The bed and breakfast kind of started in Europe. This is a little different. These are a relatively recent addition to America, but you're getting a room in a home, and they're providing you with like it says, a place to sleep and a meal the next day. Some ideas that are kind of interesting. 1829, we got the first hotel with a bellman. The first hotel that had a lock on a guest room. And the first hotel to offer free soap.
I mean, eventually they got to stop smelling.
Yeah. 1859, we get the first hotel with an elevator, and we get hotels starting to use electricity for lighting.
You know what's always fun, Dr. Robertson?
What's that?
Is students going to Europe for the first time and getting on a hotel elevator.
It's about the size of a suitcase.
Yes, it is. And then all of a sudden realizing that it's just going to be quicker to take the stairs.
Well, I took students to Paris a couple years ago, and we were staying in this little hotel in France, and there was a elevator.
Yeah.
I'd say the door was maybe 18 inches across, and I could have stood in it with my suitcase if I'd held my suitcase above my head. And
that's usually when you get stuck on like the 9th floor.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm never gonna take this elevator. I walked, and the stairs were narrow and dark, but it's like I'm never getting in that elevator.
Well, that's a practical lesson on why you should travel light.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we got our first cruise.
1867. And supposedly one of the passengers on the first cruise was Mark Twain.
How about that? I wonder if that's where he came up with Huckleberry Finn. Maybe.
It's interesting. He became a lifelong fan of cruises after that and wrote about them commonly. But he was on the first cruise. The railroads. The railroads were a huge development.
They are. And honestly, if you still today, you can take trains cross country in some amazing rides.
That's
I recommend the California Zephyr from Chicago to San Francisco. You know,
That's right, because
we've done a couple, yeah.
yeah. So the big innovation about railroads is that prior to for all of human history, the
Mhm.
fastest way to travel was a horse
Yeah.
until the railroads were invented. So for like 100,000 years, the fastest way you could travel was a horse until the 1860s, and then trains were faster. And so like that's a major upgrade.
Well, I mean, and that helped the expansion too. You could transfer lumber and all sorts of goods from one part of the country to another
You could travel safely
easily.
on
Yeah.
schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could travel quickly. Just
Yeah.
it's hard to imagine the impact that it had.
Yeah.
Other thing that was invented in the 1800s, the U.S. park system.
Ah, one of my favorites.
It's described as America's best idea, the invention of the park system, and I tend to agree with that.
Yeah.
So we take public lands, some of the most beautiful, unique, irreplaceable places on earth, and you know what we're going to do? We're going to put them in a trust for everyone to enjoy them. If you're a citizen, if you're a member of the human race, you can go to this place for a small token fee and visit and hang out there and explore some of the most beautiful, unusual places on Earth. You can go like 90% of the world's thermal activity, 90% of the world's geysers are in Yellowstone National Park. There is nowhere else on Earth like it.
Oof.
You want to see glaciers? Go to Glacier National Park. You want to see the largest mountain in the United States? Go to Denali.
Well, and really, again, you don't necessarily even have to travel abroad to get to experience different cultures. Each
Right.
part of the U.S. is unique in its own way, and seeing the national parks is a really cool way to do it.
You want to see the biggest hole in the world?
Go to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
I've been to the mini Grand Canyon in Taiwan. It wasn't even
remarkable. Oh, there's also a mini Grand Canyon in Yellowstone National Park, and it's pretty impressive. But
yeah, this one wasn't. I mean, it was neat. It just, I don't know why they called it mini Grand Canyon.
And then we've got 1900s to 1950s, things that have come about and happening. We started using electricity for cooking, not just for lighting. And this is important because prior to this, people were using a lot of wood. And so a lot of smoke pollution and things like that.
Wood and coal. I mean, wasn't it coal that pretty much killed a bunch of people in England somewhere because they're in a valley and the pollution?
Oh yeah, you get carbon dioxide poisoning.
Yeah.
Franchising started in 1907, and the first business to franchise was the Ritz-Carlton.
That's a huge leap forward.
What's that?
That's a huge leap forward.
It is, because this is the first time that I'm not selling you a good or a service. I'm selling you a way of doing business. And this is Western hospitality. So McDonald's and Holiday Inn and all these places are franchised. They're providing standard ways of doing business. And so that started with Ritz-Carlton in 1907. We get the first motels popping up in 1925, and this depends on the highways. So prior to this, all hotels were in the downtown because that's where business happened. People traveled on little tiny dirt roads until they got into town, then they drove downtown, and that's where everything was, and the big hotel was downtown. There used to be the Oglethorpe Hotel in downtown Brunswick, burned down many, many, many years ago. But downtown always had the hotels. But once we start getting the highway system, well, people are traveling, it's like I'm not going from city to city necessarily. I am traveling along this path.
Yeah.
I don't want to drive into the city. I want where I'm going to stay near my highway. And so now we get motels popping up near exits and things. And then we get Hilton developed. They were the first to have like international hospitality.
Nice.
Yeah. Some more. Darn it.
Yeah, let's just go slide by slide on the outside part.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
So, can you see it?
Yep.
All right. So, first thing, the 1904 World's Fair.
Mm.
Lots of great things happen at the World's Fair. Lots of terrible things happen too, but lots of great things happen. And one, this is kind of a weird idea to me, but two things were introduced at the 1904 World's Fair: the hamburger and the hot dog.
Huh. How about that?
And like, how much of American fast food is based on that?
Hamburgers alone, no kidding.
Yeah, and so I mean that is the impact is huge. Las Vegas was created in 1905, basically because the trains needed a place to get water, and there was water there. So I said that all of human history, the fastest way to travel was a horse until we got the train. That's like in the 1880s. Then by the 1930s, we get planes, and so suddenly even trains are out of date. There's we can travel so much faster now. Where essentially you can go anywhere in the world in a day. Just a huge, huge change.
Yeah.
Ellsworth Statler opens his first permanent hotel, and what his big innovation was a private bathroom. So
I'll pay $1.50 for that.
for $1.50, you get a hotel room with a private bathroom.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then we get depressed. Who knew?
Yeah. Okay. Moving forward a little bit, more and more Americans are traveling. We get the interstate highway system.
The Holiday Inn. Now, what's really cool is if you ever find yourself in Detroit, there's the Henry Ford Museum, and they have an exact replica of a 1950s Holiday Inn guest room. It's really kind of cool to see. Please stay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're ever in Memphis, you can visit the University of Memphis and go to the Kimmons Wilson Hospitality School. Kimmons Wilson is the guy who founded Holiday Inn.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we teach in hotel management is a variation of Holiday Inn's service manual from 1950. They pretty much invented modern franchise hotel business.
Yeah. First luxury, the Hyatt, followed by Four Seasons. Yep. Nice.
Hilton buys the Statler Group. Hilton moves to Las Vegas. The reason this is important is Hilton was the first big hotel company that looked at Las Vegas. Prior to that, it was run basically by the mob. And Hilton said, you know what? These mobsters, they're running Las Vegas and making money, but they're not running it like a business. They're gangsters. They're
money laundering. I mean, they're not concerned about the profit as much as cleaning up their money.
They're making a profit, but come on, if we run it like a business, we can make money like a business. Yeah. And so Hilton went in and legitimized Las Vegas, largely the business practices.
Who knew Paris Hilton was so influential?
Well, that's her grandfather.
I know it is.
Yeah. Conrad Hilton.
Yeah, I just don't know if the students know who. Oh, that was absolutely.
I don't know what the hell I've done to these slides, man.
And I don't know. Just exit out and let's go back.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I don't know why the slides are acting like this.
I don't know. He decided to get a little fancy on it.
Those 60s and 70s, we get growth again in franchises. Mm-hmm. Especially with the burger restaurants that we used to have a lot more burger chains, and it's narrowing down to just a few big survivors. But each one of these is an international company. McDonald's is a huge, huge company. Burger King is part of what is it? Yum Brands.
Are they still? I'll look that up.
Yeah. Hardee's is partnered with the Carl's Jr. All these places are now gigantic international companies. Yeah. The 1980s, we start getting some interesting development in lodging. It's like a lot of the lodging companies are starting to look around and say, there are other things out there that we could make money doing. So like adding timeshares, adding new services. But like if you're Marriott, you look out there, we provide a place for people to stay overnight. That's not that different from a retirement home. Maybe we should open some retirement homes. Well, we're Marriott services. We run restaurants and hotels for people. Well, that's not that different from running college food service. And so we start getting this move into all sorts of products and services from the lodging industry. We get the deregulation of the airline industry prior to about mid 70s. The airline industry was regulating what they could charge and what routes they could fly. We got rid of that, which has destabilized the airline industry. Rates have gone down. Like it's cheaper to fly now than historically at any other point. But also every major airline has declared bankruptcy at least once in the last 30 years.
It's not it's RBI, Restaurant Brands International.
Okay.
They own Popeyes and Tim Hortons and quite a bit of restaurants here. I think Chipotle they might have too. They must have bought Chipotle from McDonald's.
Yeah. Chipotle was McDonald's, and they sold it off. They had their corporate cultures didn't mesh.
It happens.
And then we got the theme park boom. The theme parks were invented by Walt Disney. Prior to theme parks, every town pretty much had a boardwalk area. They had an area that would have rides and places where you could go play games of chance, and where the saloons were on the edge of town. You would take a streetcar out there to the end of the line, and to that neighborhood would be where all the adults would go for entertainment. And so but also this is where things like there were strippers and prostitutes and bars and stuff like that. So this whole idea of entertainment, like theme park type stuff before they were called theme parks, was kind of seedy. It's kind of, it wasn't like somewhere you take a family. Walt Disney's great turnaround, his great idea was like, you know what? I'm going to create a theme park that's for families. And everybody's like, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard.
In fact, you might relate to this. Somebody back then went, that's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how this plays out.
Yeah. And so he actually had to use the rights for his movies, for Snow White and Cinderella, to get the money to open the first theme park, because the bankers were convinced it was going to fail. But then,
well, it was a big gamble. I mean, it really was. I mean, look at it. Even from when it began, the capital investment it took to make it.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
But since then, in the 70s through 90s, we get Legoland. We get what's the one with
Six Flags? You get
SeaWorld, Cedar Point.
What's that? The Knott's Berry Farm. You get my favorite, Universal Studios.
Yeah, you get all of those things that have come about. Yeah. So now I'm going to tell you about some important people, and they're just stories worth knowing. We'll start off with Marriott, or J. Willard Marriott is his name. 2,700 hotel operations, about 133,000 employees in 65 countries. And his very first business was an A&W root beer. That was the beginning of the Marriott empire. And in 1956, he bought his first hotel. So, this is a guy who really kind of created a lot of the business, the way that we do business in our industry. Next guy that's important to know, Escoffier, Auguste Escoffier. Now, I'm a little biased here because I'm a chef, and he is the king of chefs and the chef of kings. This is the guy who invented the modern kitchen. And I mean that in like the truest sense. Prior to him, some of the things, like it was normal that cooks got a ration of how much alcohol they got to drink every day. That being a cook was like just viewed as being slightly better than a pirate, that you're going to be drunk, you're going to be disorderly. And he basically single-handedly transformed it into a profession. Yeah. So in his kitchens, he ended the abusiveness of cooks, because, there was also...
Did he?
Well, he made it better.
Yes.
You didn't get beat with a rod, So,
that is a huge step.
Yeah, he encouraged his cooks to learn like the science of how food is made and
Mm-hmm.
prepared. He created the modern organization of the kitchen. So we have a steward department, we have a grill cook, we have a sauce cook, we have a saute cook, we have a cold pantry. All that, he invented that. He modeled it after the military. It's called the brigade, but he created the modern kitchen organization. The black and white checkered pants, that's his invention. The double-breasted white coat, that's his invention. And he just turned it into a profession. So very important character. Ray Kroc.
Ah, what a crock.
They,
No, this guy's amazing though, because how he started off and saw the potential and what the McDonald brothers actually started,
yeah,
changed it from a milkshake machine salesman to,
the king of franchising.
yeah.
Well, that he was like Matt said, he was an equipment salesman, and his busiest customer who kept buying new ice cream or milkshake machines were the McDonald's brothers. They had this restaurant that had a really simple menu. They sold milkshakes, cokes, hamburgers, and fries. And no one had really done that before, and they got it very systematized. He's like, what are these people doing? Why are they having to buy so many ice cream or so many milkshake machines? He went out there and he bought the rights to the idea from them.
You know what's funny is that their ice cream machines still break down a lot today.
Yeah. Well, it's so one of the things is he stressed like a scientific approach. Like like McDonald's University, they teach their employees, they teach the managers how to run a McDonald's. So it's like very much it's systematized. There's a best way to do it. And the things that set him apart was he stressed quality. Now, some people talk about the quality of McDonald's, but it's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You never hear about McDonald's having a foodborne illness outbreak. You can say a lot of things.
Yeah, typically not. And I mean, that's part of the whole franchising thing is you're not just buying a model, but the franchisor is making sure that you live up to some certain standards.
Right.
So that way, if a McDonald's is going downhill, they're probably going to either get the rights stripped away, and somebody else is going to.
Yeah, you're going to lose that franchise.
Yeah.
He stressed service. He stressed cleanliness
Mm-hmm.
and the concept of good value. Now, on the other hand, and this is just kind of a personal side, Ray Kroc was kind of a jerk.
Yeah, all people like that weren't they?
So one of my favorite stories about him is that a lot of McDonald's are up in the Northeast, and so there are a lot of Catholic people there. So on Fridays, people wouldn't eat hamburgers. So the franchisees were asking for a non-meat sandwich that McDonald's could serve, so they didn't lose business on Fridays when people are eating fish. If you're Catholic,
yeah.
And so, the franchisees have a lot of ideas because they're having to deal with the customers and what the customers are asking for. Ray Kroc is like, no. You don't tell me how to run McDonald's. I tell you how to run McDonald's. So what we're going to do for our meat-free alternative is a hula burger. We're going to take a piece of pineapple and grill it and put mustard and ketchup on it, put it on a bun. And he pushed the hula burger for a long time. And it wasn't until the franchisees revolted that he stopped pushing it and they switched to the Filet-O-Fish.
Well, and franchisees really have helped out McDonald's a lot. The Egg McMuffin, the you mentioned the fish fillet, the Big Mac,
they become
Happy Meal,
the
apple pie.
He became a lot better about listening to the franchisees' ideas. At first, he was just kind of a control freak. Another story I like about, or not like about Ray Kroc, but just another story about him. The McDonald's brothers, after he bought the rights to the name, he bought them all except to the original location. So the McDonald's brothers retained the original McDonald's. But once he was successful, he built the world's largest McDonald's across the street from them and ran them out of business.
I mean, yeah, it happens. And because of them finally listening to some of the stuff, they have a test kitchen, which is really neat to see. There's documentaries and stuff out there, but up in Chicago is where the university is, Hamburger University, and also their test kitchen where they try out all sorts of stuff, like the failed pizza experiment of the 90s.
Yeah, you can still get McDonald's pizza in Ohio. I think Cincinnati may be the only market that still has it. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That does not sound right.
Another person of note, Walt Disney. I've already talked about him a little bit. What he did was he included the entertainment aspect of it, made it a family business. He took a business that was not family friendly and created a family friendly version of it and was hugely successful.
It is a small world after all. Yeah,
Colonel
sorry
Sanders.
for anybody. The Colonel.
Yeah, he's an interesting character.
Yeah.
So there are tons of stories about him doing things like he would visit franchises even after he sold the company, and if he didn't think their quality was good, he would hit the employees with his cane and like just beat the crap out of them and stuff.
I guess when you're old and rich, you can probably get away with that.
Yeah, but you know, he didn't even get rich until he was in his 60s.
Yeah.
Prior to that, he was a traveling salesman. But what he brought to the business is he illustrates the importance of intellectual property and being technologically superior, because he had one thing that KFC was built on, and that was he was traveling in his job as a traveling salesman. He encountered a man who had built a pressure deep fryer. And so what that allowed was you could cook chicken in about 8 minutes. Now, if you do fried chicken stovetop, it takes about 20 to 24 minutes to cook. So he bought this piece of equipment and licensed it. So he's the only one in the world who can use a pressure deep fryer. He's the only person in the world that can cook fried chicken in 8 minutes. He's the only person in the world who can have fast food fried chicken. No one else can cook it fast enough. And so KFC was built on the strength of a patent.
Did you know that he was in a shootout when he opened up his first restaurant?
I would believe
he was doing this massive marketing campaign by painting on the side of barns. Apparently, he was overpainting somebody else's advertisement. And one day he had to rush there. The guy shot somebody who was with him, killed him, and Colonel Sanders shot that guy and wounded him. No joke. I mean, he's a certified,
Kentucky Colonel.
Yeah.
Okay, who else? I'll get back to the historic transportation in a minute. Just even I had said, horseback travel, train travel, airplane. Even as these things have been replaced by faster and faster means of travel, we still like these old methods and still revisit them. They still exist. Stagecoach gave way to water travel largely, although water travel has always been around. Rail travel made that faster. Automobiles made that personal. Air travel made it instant. What's next?
Well, I mean, they're talking about, what is it? The tube between like Seattle and LA.
Is that the Elon Musk?
Yeah, the underground thing.
Hyper tube or whatever.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, we have space tourism. Yes. We do. I mean, SpaceX, I mean, if you have enough money, who knows what the next thing really is, because you can also modify some of this stuff too and make it into something completely different.
I think virtual tourism experiences will be one of the next big things.
Yeah, I mean, it's great, but there's nothing better than like
going somewhere.
Yeah. So I went to Iguazu Falls, and I can look at pictures of it and it's magnificent, but you just don't get the feel. You don't hear the roar of the water.
Yeah.
You don't get that fine mist, which hopefully isn't polluted water hitting you. Virtual is great to get you set up before you go to maybe get you comfortable, but there's nothing like the real thing.
Okay, so I started this out with the wonders of the ancient world. Here are the new wonders of the world. Things that people visit for. Just for instance, the Great Wall of China, the ancient city of Petra. Mm-hmm. You know where Petra? Or you know what Petra is, Matt?
Isn't it 80s like Christian rock band? It is, but what's Petra?
It's the city in the desert from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Isn't that the one where if he hadn't even been part of it, that they would have been just fine?
I think all of them are that way, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a city that's carved out of a canyon in the desert.
Oh,
It's
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
amazing. The statue of Christ Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro, the big Christ with his arms up on top of the mountain over Rio. People want
Hmm.
to see that. Machu Picchu in Peru, the Mayan ruins of Chichen Itza in Mexico. People travel to Rome to see the Colosseum.
Hmm.
And then the Taj Mahal, the most beautiful building in the world, supposedly.
You know what? I wouldn't doubt it. Um, the Great Wall of China is kind of neat because depending on where you go, it's completely different. Do you know why?
Well, it was built over hundreds of years by many different people.
And it's built based on whatever material they have nearby. So if it's in the desert part, it's pretty much gone because they built it using the sand that was nearby.
Ah,
So some of it, they may have had these giant stones that they were able to put up there, and it wasn't designed to stop people from going across it. It was designed so that horses can cross it to protect them from invading armies.
yeah.
If they're not on horses, guess what? They're a lot easier to slaughter.
Yeah, because what they were really concerned about were the Mongols, like
Hmm.
Genghis Khan, who were steppe horse archers. You know,
Yeah,
they traveled on ponies with bows and arrows, and so without the horses, they're not nearly as.
as effective. Yeah.
So here, I'm just going to talk about some kind of unusual tourism things for the last few slides, and then we'll get out of here.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Tourism that we may not think about, religious tourism, people traveling to religious sites. Not my
Yeah.
thing, but people do it.
It doesn't matter. If I go anywhere in Europe and I see an old church, I'm probably going to go into it because of the architecture and just, the stuff that's in there. It's like going into a museum.
Actually, now that you say that, that's probably true. I remember when I was in Paris, I went into Notre Dame, and it was one of the most strikingly beautiful things I have ever seen.
Yeah. And now you can't even go into it.
Yeah, it caught on
So,
fire.
yeah.
Glad I went in when I had the opportunity.
Yeah.
The Vatican, people want to go see the Pope, want to have go to Vatican City. People travel for that. Mecca, people doing the Hajj. If you were Islamic, you're required, if you're able to, at least one time in your life,
Yeah. To
travel
do
to
the
Mecca.
great pilgrimage. Yeah.
Yeah, to do your pilgrimage. So that's religious tourism. Lourdes is famous for miracles. Like if if you're disabled, you go there and bathe in the water at Lourdes, and you'll be cured. And so people traveling
Mhm.
want to go to these sites.
Yeah.
Another kind of tourism that's a little different. Probably worth
Well,
talking about ecotourism. Matt, you know anything about ecotourism?
well, I do. And actually, if you want to learn more, you can take my class in the springtime. Uh, and we talk about it extensively.
Yeah.
But Belize is really neat, and it's all depending on really the government has to step up and really take an interest.
Yeah.
But people have found out that it can be profitable to be sustainable. So
Right. And so that's, it's not just Costa Rica or Belize, but it's pretty much any type of tourism where the goal, it has components of education, it has components of sustainability. We're going to have tourism in order to raise money to maintain this environment and to maintain this culture. And that
Yeah.
we're only going to have enough tourism to do that.
yeah.
Rural tourism. We don't think of this as a thing so much. We think about people going to cities.
Ah, he stopped sharing. It's
Is
all
the
right.
Zoom meeting still going?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, let me share that again. I don't know. It just crashed.
It happens.
Sorry, guys. This is a heck of a ride for everybody.
Well, the great thing is that we're kind of lowering the bar here for them too.
Hey, yeah.
All
So
right.
when you have to do your recording with me, you can see how.
Let's just keep it to this type of view, so that way we don't play with fire here.
Like people travel for. You go to cities or you go to attractions. We don't think about people go to the country, but it is absolutely one of those areas or one of those things that people travel for. One, I used to live in an Amish area in Ohio, and so people would go there to see the simple lifestyle, the rural lifestyle of the rural Amish. A lot of people like going to rural tourism because they feel it's more authentic, because you're getting to see another culture kind of live their day-to-day normal life. It's not, you're not going there to see them do something exciting. You're just getting to experience how someone else lives.
Yeah.
Beer and wine tourism. This is one that's growing every day, getting bigger and bigger, especially with the advent of so many more wineries, breweries, and distilleries out there. This is big business.
Well, we got 2 in town.
Yeah.
Yeah, Richland Rum and Silver Bluff Brewery, where you can see them making the beer. I believe you can see them distilling the rum and everything. I mean, Anheuser-Busch in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Huge.
I had a friend get married a few years ago, and we went on a brewery tour in Michigan. It was fantastic. Went to a lot of 8 different breweries. It was not as fantastic as it could have been because I was the designated driver.
Well, I mean, somebody's got to not drink the bells.
So. That was me. And so I was driving the van we rented. But, we spent 2 days basically going from brewery to brewery to brewery, learning about beer, sampling it, having a great time. Yeah. There is a video available to you on D2L for the Bourbon Trail. Just give you a quick explanation of that. Basically, in Kentucky, where bourbon comes from, it's become people want to go visit the distilleries. And so they've actually put together a trail. It's one of the best tourism trails, I'd say, in the United States. It's one of the most interesting activities you can do. And as you go, you get free samples of bourbon.
Yeah, I enjoyed every single one of them that I went to back when I did it. So.
Yeah. Wine country, what's called enotourism or wine tourism. A big part of, say, Napa Valley and Sonoma, that area is people visiting the area. It's not just wine production. It's people who want to go visit the wineries. Yeah. And you can do that on a train if you want.
Yeah.
There's trains that go through wine country. You can do it on bicycles if you want to. You can do it in a limo if you want to. There's so many different, price points and levels and styles and ways to travel that are different to do this.
Well, and it's only limited by what your imagination is on how you can do it. So,
yeah. Some other types of tourism, LGBT tourism.
Yeah. I mean, the parades. I know up in Michigan, our mutual friend Allison would go every single year, but people would fly in to go to the big pride parade that they had every year.
Yeah. And so I have a question, Matt. Why would we want to have, if I'm a hotel or a resort owner, why is this clientele attractive?
The
idea?
I don't know. They're going to be spending money.
You're right. So here's,
that's for any clientele. Like, money talks.
Well, think about it demographically.
Yeah.
The demographic that is least likely to have kids and is most likely to spend money on themselves for travel, 2 men traveling together. So
discretionary income's there.
Yeah, men on average make more money than women. A couple of men have more discretionary income to spend on travel. So they tend to spend more. So if from a business point of view, this is a very attractive clientele, they travel a lot, they spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so there are frequent travelers, and they're often international travelers, a lot of places to go.
Oh, culinary tourism.
Culinary tourism. So
now you mentioned your trip to France, and part of it was showing everybody the food of the area.
It was.
Yeah.
So when we went, I actually took the students to Le Cordon Bleu, which is a cooking school in Paris. So I actually took them there to see a cooking school, to see French cuisine. But it could be people want to go see Harvest, like they want to go there when the
grapes are being harvested.
Yeah, the grapes being harvested, the lavenders. My mom went to Paris or to France last year, and she wanted to be there during when the lavender was coming in. So, or people travel for food festivals like Shrimp and Grits. That's
the Brunswick Stew Fest.
Yeah, Stoubelie. Yeah, or restaurant culture. You travel to places that have amazing restaurants. Now, this is a little bit about me. More or less, I plan my whole world as planned around where I'm going to eat. and what I'm going to eat. And so pretty much any city I've ever been to, I can tell you where to go eat. I can tell you where the good local authentic place is. But some places just have tons of good restaurants. Maybe they have a very successful restaurant culture. Like the Bay Area is just renowned for every restaurant that, there's so many that are so good that just the overall level of quality is very high.
Yeah.
New York City is the same way. I was amazed when I lived in Ohio that Cleveland has one of the best food scenes I have ever seen in a city.
And the West Side Market, just
traveling there,
hands down. Yeah.
So, culinary tourism, this is authentic cultural experience. You go somewhere, the food is different. You want to experience that.
Yeah.
Like you go to New Orleans. New Orleans food is unique, but it could never be replicated anywhere else because there are historic things that converge there. What you have is a French colony at the end of a long river that was a trading destination. So you have all of these crops and things coming through. So they have good food, but it's French, not English. So the French have a better history of food because it's a French colony. You also get African slaves coming into the port. They're bringing African culture, African cooking methods and ingredients in. So that's being mixed into the Creole. You have Native American. It's close to Mexico. So you're getting peppers. And so all these things combine to create Cajun food.
Well, and not just that, but I mean, you can make food, New Orleans style food anywhere now, but it's not the same because you don't have the atmosphere as well to really bring it in. I mean, we've all been to those authentic restaurants, whatever it is, and usually it's just a parody of the culture.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to mention that what I always describe as the terrible word in tourism. Which is authenticity, because people want to travel and have an authentic experience, but
they don't.
Well, but it's like, what is authentic? Like, is it when the experience is what you think it's going to be? Like, oh, it's just like on the commercial on TV. Does that make it authentic? Or, there are lots, or is it having the experience where it's the way the locals get it? Is that authentic? The word authentic is important in tourism and travel, and we have a hard time defining it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a 4-letter word, Sometimes it's appropriate to use.
Sports tourism. Now, this is not me. I am not a sports guy. But, people travel to events. At least they did prior to COVID.
Well, yeah, some people will go to, for baseball, to spring training and then try to get to every single baseball stadium in their lifetime.
We'll go to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame in
Cooperstown.
Cooperstown. Same thing with hockey and everything else. They all got their own little followings. It's rare that you see somebody who's going to be a big baseball, hit every stadium and then every football stadium, but it happens.
Yeah. Space tourism is a thing. Virgin Galactic and SpaceX. Space tourism is currently for the super wealthy.
So you're saying it's out of our price range? Okay.
Well, it's out of mine.
It's out of mine. Yeah. Come on, Mega Million.
Other tourism, drug tourism.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to get high.
Yeah, and so people travel to Amsterdam. That's a big thing in the United.
Well, it used to be a bigger thing, and students may not, because now our students are at the age where Colorado's been legal their entire adult life.
Yeah.
It used to be back in the ancient days when there would be movie references about going to Amsterdam. Pulp Fiction comes to mind, right? They wouldn't understand it now how big of a deal it was because it was just legal.
That was the only place in the world where cannabis was legal.
Yeah, for the longest time.
So now in the United States, people travel, especially along the West Coast, people travel to the West Coast because they want to have, they want to experience the what is offered there. And then it's other places too, like the largest raves in the world, the largest basically drug parties in the world are in Goa, India.
Yeah.
If you want to see some crazy videos of some crazy concerts, just
Yeah.
Google Goa, India.
Yeah, there's pretty much no other level of debauchery out there.
Yeah, it's
So,
like an entire islands are dedicated to just
mhm,
partying.
yeah.
It's amazing.
Dark tourism. Now,
Yeah,
this is something that doesn't get, well, I mean, it gets some recognition. Savannah has dark tourism.
yeah.
You know, they have their haunted tours
The
that
ghost
they
tour.
do, and
Yeah.
the cemeteries. You know, the we did a cemetery tour in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. We saw where Evita is buried and stuff.
So
You know,
yeah, dark tourism, pretty much anything with a dark theme. So death
yeah,
or war, murder, all
yeah,
kind of along those, that counts as dark tourism.
yeah.
So death, people want to go see battlefields, or they want to go, people want to go to Verdun in France, which is battlefield from World War One. People want to go to where they?
There's battlefields around here that people
Oh
will
yeah,
come and see.
Fort
You know,
Frederica, Bloody Marsh.
yeah, right. I mean, Gettysburg. You know, sometimes we just think about the top level, like first come to mind type things, but there's always a niche market for something, and
And
it's important if you are in the hospitality industry, especially like hotels, to know all the little niche things around.
and it's also this, we'll talk about this more when we get to it, but it's also like knowing what's appropriate. So like, death and war, these dark topics, for like, it's hard to judge what is appropriate behavior. Like, when does something move from being history, or when does something being move from being,
From too soon to
yeah, from being a
history.
current event to being history?
Yeah, like 9/11.
Right.
I mean, now it's the Twin Towers site is a tourist attraction.
Right.
You know, it's got the museum and everything else. Some people, like, as horrible as it sounds, but let's say there's 2 hurricanes heading right now to the Gulf Coast, right? And if it does massive amount of damage, some people will actually want to go just to see it look destroyed,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, to each their own, but as long as you help, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the other day we had the water spout here on St. Simon's Island, or right, the
Yeah.
water tornado off. And I realize how people get killed by tornadoes.
oh crap.
Because I'm driving and I see this water spout, and my first thought is, wow, I should drive down to the pier so I could see it better.
Yeah. Somebody who grew up in South Dakota where we have tornadoes all the time. No thanks. I'll hit the basement. There's no basements here.
Travel for murder. Like, there's the
John Wayne Gacy's house.
Yeah, the Jack the Ripper tour.
Oh, Jack the Ripper. Yeah. I mean, what was the Charlie Manson murders, the Cheryl Tate house and all that stuff? I mean, people will.
In 2016, when the Republican National Convention was in Cleveland,
Yeah.
The owners of Jeffrey Dahmer's house in Akron were renting it out as an Airbnb.
Oh, that's just gross.
So you could stay in the Dahmer house if you wanted to.
Just don't eat anything out of the fridge.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Other types of tourism, disaster tourism.
Which I mentioned. Sorry.
Yeah, disaster. Like after the hurricanes in New Orleans, people want to go see it.
In Japan, I've done disaster tourism.
You wanted to go see it after the tsunami?
No, I went to Peace Park.
Oh,
in Hiroshima. Yeah. It has the one lone standing building after we dropped the nuke on them. But I mean, yeah, people wanted to go see it post tsunami. Garden tourism.
Yeah, the Alhambra, which is famous hanging gardens in Spain. It's this mixture of European and Moorish culture. Beautiful, beautiful gardens. It's one of those, for my wife, it's one of the destinations she most wants to visit. Virtual tourism we talked about, even though I've misspelled it here.
Video.
Yeah.
It's all right. But I mean, the nice thing is, especially in like this time, you can kind of take a little mental escape and go see something and get ready to go see it. Maybe get excited. Maybe it's not your jam, everything is.
It's been neat. One of the things all the museums have done in the last few months is put so many of their attractions online so you can visit them virtually.
Yeah, which that part I enjoy.
atomic tourism.
We dropped the
Chernobyl,
bomb.
Chernobyl in the last few years has just seen this huge growth in people visiting the site.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't want to glow at night.
Yeah. Hey, you just said you went to Hiroshima.
I did. I lived in Japan for a while in the 90s, and I was there during the anniversary, which wasn't, it was somber, but I did go there because it's important to recognize the horrible things that we've done and learn from our past.
Yeah, I was in New Mexico and went to visit White Sands, which is the home of the U.S. nuclear
Test site.
program. It's where the
Yeah.
nuclear bombs were invented. And as a science nerd, it's like, wow, this is an important location. I want to go see it. Now down here on the left hand, I've got a picture from Las Vegas. It's not entirely clear, but this is actually taken in downtown Las Vegas. And what you're looking at there is a mushroom cloud where they are testing an atomic bomb in the desert. And in Las Vegas, they actually used to run atomic bomb tours.
Oh my goodness. I wonder how many people got cancer because of that.
All of them.
Yeah. We're lucky we didn't end up with like 3 eyes and stuff after that.
And then, other tourism, slum tourism. This is one that, people are weird, don't pay to see anything, but there were tours where you could go see like the bad parts of Detroit. You can go on a tour of Compton. There was something called Real Bronx Tours that got shut down, but it's basically here, ride on this bus and you can go watch poor people.
It's just,
After Slumdog Millionaire, India had a huge increase in slum tourism. People wanting to go see
the real slums.
Yeah, the real poor places.
It just, I don't know. That just seems sick to me,
That does,
because I love Detroit, and people like to crap on it, but Detroit's a great city. So
hey, it's the Paris of the West, man.
Yeah, it's the salt of the earth, or at least it's got the salt mines.
It is. It's got the potential for a huge rebound. There's a lot of cool stuff in it.
Yeah, it really is. Oh, literary tourism.
Yeah.
Well, and this is something that's kind of near and dear to your heart too, a little bit, because
like Tolkien.
Well, that too, but there was a book that was adapted to a movie that was filmed near where you used to live in Ohio.
Yeah, The Shawshank Redemption. So that
yeah.
People wanted to go visit that film site. People want to go see Stranger Things where it's filmed, or The Vampire Diaries in North Georgia, or The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Tolkien, which is the Lord of the Rings, is really the thing that put this on the map. After the Lord of the Rings movies came out, boom, suddenly New Zealand is seeing $100 million uptick in tourism. And, if $100 million appears, people want to know where it's coming from.
Well, and there's pros and cons to that too, especially in New Zealand. That's a very natural, beautiful country that prides itself on being sustainable and everything else. Yeah. So they'll kick you out if you litter.
I've got a little picture here of a castle in Wallachia, and it was Wallachia is also known as Transylvania. And
yes.
This is the
Dracula castle.
Yeah, this is the castle of Vlad Tepes, also known as Dracula. And so you can visit this castle. Last year, they were actually allowing people to stay in it overnight.
Really?
Yeah. Would you want to sleep in Dracula's castle?
Yeah. If I'm going to travel all that way, why not? I mean, that's in what, Romania?
Yeah.
Heck yeah. I'm sold,
Transylvania. So trans means between, and Sylvania means the woods. So this is literally the woods between Turkey and Europe. That's what Transylvania is. Okay, so that's it for Chapter 2 of Tourism.
That was pretty interesting. Thanks for having me. I hope everybody else makes it just as interesting in their presentations coming up this semester.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. Sorry that things got a little spotty with the slides there, guys. That was pretty strange.
Technical issues. It happens to the best of us.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.